when I got connected with Sid and John, I came from Lockport Air Force Base over in Columbus, Ohio. I was flying B-47 Phase 5 capsules, which is take the bomb bay out, put a 4-person or a 2-person capsule up in the belly, and we used to take off up front, go through a little crawlway, get to the back, and then we had our own little capsule back there. I had all of 18 months in the service when I got orders. I had volunteered for it, got orders to come over to Bunker Hill. I was about 24 years old. I think Sid was probably way up there, about 30 something. So, and John was above me. The only thing I beat him in was height. If you ever see the picture in the back, it's Sid, John, and Jerry. Well, I'll tell you that I used to be 6'4", and now at 77, I'm 6'3". So I'm giving some of it back. But what is a DSO? I mean, Defensive Systems Operator. Many people might say, well, what did you do other than getting the lunches? No, but all the electronic equipment that I operated was all automatic. So in order to defend ourselves against radars and missiles, etc., I just turned on the switches. The whole process was what they call rain gate capture. It would capture the signal from the radar, walk it off, in other words, tell them it was someplace else, and then drop it. So they didn't get a good hold of us as a target. So that was pretty easy. I didn't have any real trouble with that. Most of the time I spent with one, reading checklists. Sid always had trouble reading. I mean, no, not really. So it was that reading a checklist item, getting a response, and of course getting the proper response, so that we could fly. Addition to that, I handled communications. Most of the communications once we were airborne. Sid took it from starting engines, talked to the tower, took us off, and then when we got to ATC control, he would turn it over to me, and I did most of the communications until we come back for the landing. If we were going on a bomb run, I did the communications with the bomb site. And the third item was fuel management. Now the B-58 was very sticky about center of gravity. And if you got too far out of the center of gravity, you could have trouble. So we had an automated system that supposedly kept the center of gravity right by transferring fuel back and forth between the tanks. But I monitored all the gauges for the fuel and made sure that we were burning properly or see if there was some problem with it. So that took up most of my time. Fuel management, communications, and monitoring my electronic countermeasures equipment. So that's what basically a DSO does. How I got on the crew of Kubish, Barrett, and Williamson, I have no idea how they selected people. I think Sid and John came up from B-47s, and then they had to put a DSO with them. And it was so fortunate that when they put them together, they put me together with them. It was a great group. We enjoyed being with each other and sharing everything that we could with each other. We spent many days on alert, and the mole hole, as they call it. And we flew many, many missions. And as a team, we did fairly well, I would say. A couple of anecdotes about the flight, the Grease Lightning flight. You know, we left Bunker Hill and had to fly to Kadena Air Force Base, Okinawa. And the flight didn't start until we took off, topped off the fuel, got to the gate at Japan. We couldn't be supersonic over Japan. I think they thought the boom might destroy part of the housing, so we went through the gate at Japan subsonic, and then we accelerated. And we did that 5 times on the flight. The 58, I think we had about 93,000 pounds of jet fuel. Lasted around an hour, a little more, and so after you were at Mach 2, you only had about an hour or so before you were getting ready for the next refueling. And that was a thing in itself, the refuelings, because you had an airplane going at Mach 2 this way, you had a tanker going at subsonic speed coming this way, and you had to make sure that this one turned at the proper time, so when we got right behind them, we were right below them, so we could start refueling. And we practiced that before the run, and it worked out real fine. Good navigator, good pilot, and I just sat back there and cheered them on. But so that was first a top-off refueling before the run, then 5 refuelings on the mission, and then a top-off at the end so we could land at Greenham Common Air Force Base, which was interesting because when I was in 47s, we used to reflex or take airplanes over and stand alert. And we did that at Greenham Common Air Force Base from Ohio. So it was kind of reminiscent of being back there again. The flight went well all the way through. I'm sure Sid got a good test of his refueling during that mission. And the only one that I remember that was kind of iffy was somewhere over Alaska, I think, when the weather was bad. And I'm going to tell it the way I believe it, man, Sid. Anyway, I can remember us trying to hook up with this KC-135, and the weather was, like I said, very bad. We were in and out of clouds, and I think we tried to ascend to get above them and whatever, and we were really having trouble. And the KC-135 pilot, Boomer, was saying, well, I don't know about this. I'm not sure it's going to make it. And he said something about, well, you know, there's another tanker up the way. And I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but Sid said, you put the boom down and I'll get it in. And basically that's what he had to do. He got us connected up, and it was a great relief when I looked up there and started seeing the tanks started taking on fuel instead of burning fuel. It's always a nice feeling to know that you have gas. Everything went well up until the last refueling. When we got our gas, dropped down, tanker went off, and we went accelerated. And of course, we had 4 max afterburners, pushed them forward, and unfortunately, one of them didn't light off. And Sid played with it and all kind of different things, and never could get the 4th AB to light off. So we were supposed to go over London at greater than the speed of sound. They wanted to have the boom, you know. So we could not, at the rate we were going, we were burning as much fuel and I think we were at 143 or something like that. We were burning fuel as if we were at Mach 2 almost, and we weren't getting, obviously, far down that line. So we decided we would delay that acceleration till later, and of course we had no fuel curves for this intermediate position. So it was a lot of guessing and a lot of what-ifing, but we finally decided that we got to a point where we would be able to make it supersonic over London. So Sid pushed it forward, and we got over London. We got topped off, and we landed at Greenham Common. The 58 had 2 side windows, and I'm back in the 3rd station. And I had taken from my lunchbox a candy bar, and I set it up in the window. And of course, going at Mach 2, there's a lot of friction going on with the airplane, and it tends to warm up things. But you have air conditioning inside, so you don't feel it too bad. But the candy bar, when I got around to trying to eat the candy bar, it was kind of soft. And I can only attribute it to the heat, the external heat, at least on that window, causing it to melt a little bit. We all had fancy flight suits, but I didn't wear mine during the flight. And after we landed, I had a quick change into one of those fancy, like Sid's flight suit is out in the case out there. So whenever we stepped out of the airplane, you know, we looked like Hollywood. So we did that after we landed, and from then on it was all over for us, outside of all the things that happened afterwards. And I'm telling you, it was overwhelming for me, a young 24-year-old first lieutenant. I wasn't like the old pros. Is that pro? Okay. But anyway, but it was a tremendous experience. I really enjoyed it, being a part of it, and I hope that I did the job that I was supposed to, and I know Sid and John did. One more comment. Can you believe that I'll fit in this? I really can. It has an uncanny way of wrapping you up so that almost anybody will fit in here. But there's a horizontal bar, and I think somebody already gave a presentation on this. There's a horizontal bar that comes up and lifts you from this joint and pulls your legs up, and then these things go down and pull your legs in. And when that happens, this comes down. And when this comes down, if your tootsies aren't in here, well, you don't need nail polish anymore. But we started off in the 58 with ejection seats. And then we went to the capsules. And when they did the capsules, they came around with a mock-up similar to this and said, no, everybody's got to be tested to make sure that they fit. I think at Bunker Hill there were 3 of us that they said, well, the machine failed. I think it blew a circuit breaker or something if it didn't fit. And so there were 3 of us that they said, well, you're not going to make it, or don't fit, or something, you know. So I was kind of in a state of limbo for a little bit there, but then they went back and they said, no, they found a problem with this, and they adjusted it, and it'd be okay. But they never came back and tested us. So I always had this thought in my mind. Was, well, what happens if I don't fit? As I said, shorter shoes. You know. But anyway, I did fit in there, and it was actually fairly comfortable because you didn't have a parachute strapped to you. You just had like a safety belt, like we wear in cars now. But anyway, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to the boss.